We are back. Hammer is back. I know we've been missing in action the last couple weeks, but we are
Couple months.
here. Yeah, for you, yeah.
Yeah, it's been a couple of months. Yeah, I had some health stuff going on that I had to get straightened out, and yeah, I just need a little bit of a reset, a little bit of a refresh, but I feel pretty good. Yeah, it's good to be back with you guys. I kind of missed it. I was starting to get that little itch. But as soon as I heard we had the Hall of Fame game on Thursday, I was like, I started itching, like started getting that little, that little football itch we got going on. But yeah, man, it feels good to be back and checking in with everybody. And yeah, man, what's going on?
Not much. I mean, a couple guys getting some contracts, training camp hype, a lot of stuff happening. Derek in the building. What up, Derek? Kev,
Derek.
what up, Kev? Missed you, bro. You brought your favorite tool, the hammer.
Yeah, buddy. So the way
That's
that
right.
sounds is weird because tool is never a good thing to be called. But Kevin, I know where you're coming from. It's a place of love. So yes, the hammer is back and we are ready to roll.
That's right. Smash that like, smash that subscribe. And throw any questions you got in the chat. I mean, I know we're in this part of the season where a lot of people are just now like itching to trade and want to make trades.
Yep. Yep.
People are on my inbox now, should I do this? Should I do that? And there's certain guys you should trade for, but there's also certain guys that, you shouldn't, or running backs, or people trying to trade QBs already. People are gonna need QBs during the season. Like, it's gonna be a way more hot commodity. They're going to be worth a lot more. And especially if you have, in this one particular situation, I had a guy, he's got like 4 good QBs, like 4 starting QBs. And it's a 14 team league, and he's like trying to get rid of Purdy for like Kincaid in a second, and a couple other, like Rashid Rice in the first, couple things that are out there, which
Trying to take
is
advantage of some
okay.
value.
It's
Yeah.
okay value wise, but like there's no rush to make that move, right? What if one of your guys gets hurt and then you have to rely on Purdy at that point? But most of
Or
all, once the season starts, somebody's going to need a quarterback, and somebody's going to be willing to pay up at that point. So
that's where I
even
was getting ready
though,
to go with it.
right?
Yep.
So even though you have, a guy that is expendable for you, it doesn't mean you have to give him up for cheap or give him up at the wrong time, right?
Yeah, I agree, and I think that one of the critical things is, especially at this time of the year, where training camp is in full swing. The Hall of Fame game is Thursday, which is wild. I feel like that game always sneaks up on me, and I'm like, oh shit, there's actual NFL football on. It's not great football, but it's football nonetheless. And I've actually been talking to some guys in our subscriber league trying to make a trade. I was actually trying to acquire AJ Brown in our subscriber league, so that
Oh,
was,
really?
yeah,
Okay.
it was getting real spicy in the back room there. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right in terms of knowing when to make those trades, especially now that the rookie hype has kind of settled down a little bit. And now those veterans that you talk about all the time are getting ready to score some points, and they're going to be more valuable. So I was actually having a chat with a couple of different guys, and they were trying to offload some of their veteran guys onto me because I have a fairly young team for the most part. And I'm like, dude, those guys are that doesn't do anything for me right now, and it doesn't do anything for you because you're getting 50-60 cents on the dollar, where if you wait a couple of weeks into the season, guys get hurt, teams fall where they may, and you'll be able to maximize value on certain guys. So I think that's a really good point, and we obviously talked about our trading strategies and timing being one of those key elements of making trades, right? Knowing when to make the deal, and especially the guys that are involved, especially if they're veterans or if you have excess quarterbacks or excess guys on your team that you want to get some value back in return for. Timing is going to be everything.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of AJ Brown, I mean, a lot of people are somewhat like hating on AJ Brown, or he's a little bit like underrated, I feel like. I
Well,
was able
because
to
of how that
acquire
season ended.
AJ Brown, after the season for T. Higgins, JSN in a third, and I got AJ Brown in a second back, 2026
Yeah.
second. But I tried to just use it to tear up with a little bit of, people just kind of off AJ Brown for I don't know what reason. I mean, and speaking of quarterbacks, like I think Jalen Hurts is going a little bit underrated right now as well. I mean, you got Saquon in the backfield, but now the offense is just better. They just signed both of your wide receivers, so you're set, right? You got AJ Brown, you got Devonta Smith, you got the bully ball guy, you've got the Slim Reaper out there, so.
I
I mean,
think
you're
I
you're
think a
pretty
lot of
much
people
you're
they
pretty much set. And then Jalen Hurts was what? QB2 last year, was he?
yes, he
Right?
was.
QB3 the season before that. I mean, in a points per
He's
game basis, I think he was QB2 last year as well. So,
he's going to be
I mean, what
phenomenal
what are
yet
we so
again.
scared of with Jalen Hurts? Like, does Saquon maybe take away some goal line carries from him? Possibly, but now with like Kellen Moore there, they're going to be throwing the football a little bit more, I think, as well. So, I mean, I think they're going to be efficient. You've got wide receivers around you. So, I mean, what are we really worried about here with Jalen Hurts or AJ Brown or Devonta Smith? I think they're very, very safe, as like really good top producers.
I think a lot of people are just very sour on them as a football team and as a little bit of a culture thing. Not a culture thing, I should say, but maybe a locker room thing because they saw how they melted down on the back end of last season. So a lot of people are just off of it. And then they go out and lose to Tampa Bay in the playoffs. Like I think that left a sour taste in a lot of people's mouth. But as we said before, another important strategy is take advantage of that, right? You could take advantage of the AJ Browns and the Jalen Hurts and people maybe souring on them a little bit. So both guys still incredibly young, and that's part of the reason why I was trying to tier up. I actually offered, I believe it was Chris Olave something in a second round pick. So it was three pieces for AJ Brown, and I have Jalen Hurts on that team. So I was trying to pair him up, and then that person wanted Tyreek Hill, and I was like, no, I'm trying to have
Still.
Tyreek Hill and AJ Brown kind of on the same team.
Right, right.
But yeah, so that deal didn't go through. He was definitely interested, but that deal didn't go through. So yeah, I'm always trying to scour out there, see what I could upgrade. I do like my team. I want to take that next level. And if I could get AJ Brown and come off of Olave and two other pieces, I wouldn't mind that. And it would add
Yeah.
extra value to me. So I'm trying to do that. I'll probably revisit it before the season actually starts, just to see maybe if I could. I'm really trying to stay away from throwing a first round pick in there because I kind of need that first round pick. So we'll see we'll see how that goes, but definitely an
I
exciting
wouldn't pay
time,
it
especially
first.
for us football.
Definitely would not pay it first. I'll tell you that. I
That's
don't think the difference between both those guys is a first. A second and a piece is reasonable. Olave is in that range where he's still valued, particularly very high. So, can you tier up or tier down? So, if I'm going to be paying a first, like I'm probably going to the JJCD, Chase Amon-Ra type guys, because
I
I
feel
can
it.
add a little bit more at that point. You know what I mean?
I
To go
feel
get
it.
those guys than to just, spend the first to go get AJ. Even though I love AJ, I mean, he's a good buy right now. But Uncle Ted
So
said Kate Stover is this year's Sam Laporta, destroying folks in camp. I mean, that's great for Kate Stover, but he's definitely, I don't think he's going to be, I don't think there'll ever be another kind of Sam Laporta situation necessarily. I mean, he was just in a good situation from the jump. But
yeah,
yeah,
in a
I
really
can't
good
get on board.
offense.
I can't get on
Yeah.
board with that, but I guess it is a small possibility.
So the trade was Chris Olave, Ricky Pearsall, and a second
Okay.
for AJ Brown.
Not bad. Not bad.
And it seemed like he was really, really tempted for that. But also to you guys out there, we still have 3 open spots in our second subscriber league. We had some people drop out just because of logistical stuff and whatever, and it's taken a long time to put everything together. but I have everything ready to roll for our second subscriber league. I kind of want to start that draft when we get back. We're actually going on vacation this weekend. So I want to start that as soon as possible because I know it's going to be a long draft. It might take about 2 weeks or so. So I want to start that pretty soon. So if anybody's interested in jumping into the second subscriber league, hit us up in the DMs or let us know here. So this way we could get your info and get you into the subscriber league. We've got 3 spots left.
I think I have one. I have to go through some of my messages. As somebody had asked.
Yeah, I want to get that draft rolling.
Feels like my leagues are finally waking up. Feels hard not to make a trade, only because some leagues have been dead and now they have awoken. Yeah, we're in that spot. Bogey, what up, Bergie?
Ogie,
Bogey.
what up,
Hertz
man?
should improve. I mean, what do you
It's
improve
hard
from
to
2 to
improve.
1?
Yeah.
You improve from 2 to 1, or you know? I think he means like throwing the football, but yeah, I mean, I'm with that. Eagles were so beat up on both sides of the ball by the time they got to the playoffs. They fell apart that whole second half with
You
whatever
could
they
see
got
it
going
coming a
on over
mile
there.
away.
So,
Yeah.
but still being able to finish as QB2. AJ Brown still being able to finish as whatever it was, wide receiver 6, 7. Devonta
Devonta
still
Smith in
being
the
a
top
top
20.
24 guy, right? So, what players ranked in the top 10, 15 of their position are you most afraid about not producing?
That's a good question.
In Dynasty, well, or I guess in general, not producing.
Or maybe like falling below expectations.
Mm, that's a good one. I mean, we just talked about Chris Olave. I mean, he
Yeah.
has an
Yeah.
opportunity to make the jump, but he also has an opportunity to just kind of stay where he's
Be
at.
where you're
Like,
at in that
you know,
16, 18 range. Yeah. I was gonna bring up Olave, and that's not part of the reason why I wanted to trade him, because obviously I want to tear up to the AJ Brown, and plus that would give me the stack. But it just feels like Olave has the talent, but the quarterback and whatever else he's working with, he's not going to be able to reach that JJ Chase, CD, Amon-Ra type level. He's going to be mired in that mid wide receiver 2 range, which is fine. And what's crazy is I was looking back at Olave's game log from last year, and he just wasn't overwhelmed. Like, he wasn't overwhelming. He only had 4 wide receiver 1 weeks. And 3 of those were during the regular season. So if you didn't make the playoffs, he only had 3 wide receiver 1 weeks. All the other weeks were 33, 16, 119, wide receiver 41, wide receiver 50, wide receiver 29, 25. Like, it was too much of that just middling nonsense where, he has the talent. The week 1, he went off for 8 for 112. And you're like, all right, let's go, and the touchdown production hasn't been there either. He only had 5 touchdowns last year, 4 of the 5 touchdowns being within the fantasy season. So the touchdown production is very underwhelming. He has 9 total in his 2 seasons, and he's finished 19 and 25 respectively in PPR. For his talent and for what we think he can be, wide receiver 19 and wide receiver 25, that's leaves a little bit to be desired. So I think that is a good type of a good person to bring up for this particular question.
yeah. I mean, I think 2 other wide receivers maybe could be like Puka and Brandon Ayuk possibly. Like, what if
Okay,
Cooper
I could
Cup
see
is
how
just
you could.
healthy all season, right? And he's just dominating, right? And Puka's just a wide receiver 2-ish. Like, we're drafting him high. We're expecting him to finish, as a top wide receiver. But there is a world where, Cup stays healthy and he's still, Stafford's dude. And listen, Puka's awesome. Puka's real because he plays barehanded with the tape, bro. He plays sometimes without the gloves, and that's a real wide receiver right there. So I do like Puka, but I can see a world where maybe Cup is still like the dominant guy there, and then Brandon Ayuk he just doesn't
With
see
all that
enough
shit going
targets.
on.
I
Yeah.
mean, well,
And
not
they
only that, he just
added
doesn't see that many targets. I mean, what do you see? Barely over 100 targets last year. Extremely efficient, but what's the chances that everything stays the same and he's able to still be that efficient on limited targets? I mean, You know, he's already hasn't finished as a wide receiver one. He's more in that high end wide receiver two range. But I can see a world where maybe he declines, right? I mean, Pearsall maybe steps up a little bit. Maybe Debo stays healthy, right? You know, see,
You
you
still
got
got
CMC as
CMC,
well. Like there
Kittle.
is a world where Brandon Ayuk just isn't as efficient as we think he's going to be or we want him to be, right?
Yeah, I would call this the Calvin Ridley question, because how did we feel about Calvin Ridley about a year ago? Great.
Hmm.
We felt fucking great about Calvin Ridley. And that was a really good example of kind of what Kevin's talking about here. So yeah, I do like the Ayuk. I was never a big Ayuk guy, to be honest with you. But at the same time, I think he is super talented. But also remember, like that's a crowded offense, and then you add a Ricky Pearsall to that. So I could see that.
I mean, not necessarily dynasty, but Devonte Adams. I mean, is there a world where he kind of falls off a little bit, right? I mean, Mike Evans is getting a little up there. He had an awesome season, but we're relying on, of course, like double-digit touchdowns and Baker Mayfield to be the same as he was last year, right? We saw what happened to Geno, like he fell off after having the good season.
Bucks are
So
not
like
going to. Baker Mayfield's not going to sneak up on anybody this year.
maybe um I guess that's it for like
I
top
got a.
15, at least at
I
wide
got.
receiver, but
I got
who
a
else you got?
decent one for running back. Kenneth Walker
Yeah.
is a very interesting one for me. A little bit of the injury history, but also Charbonnet towards the end of last season really started getting some good work, and he was pretty good in the passing game. Now, Kenneth Walker's never been heavily involved in the passing game, but I think Kenneth Walker could underwhelm you from a running back standpoint with the presence of Charbonnet in his second season. So I think that's a guy to take a look at.
I don't know. Canine is a weird one. Like, I don't like after seeing Charbonnet play and him having kind of some of the opportunities. Like,
He
I don't
wasn't
feel like he's.
great, but
No, that's the thing. Like, I don't feel like he's better than Kenneth Walker.
no, I don't say he's better, but
I
enough
think
to
that
kind of
Yeah, I mean Kenneth Walker's a good like he's a good pure runner. Like he reminds me of like he could be like at best like ceiling like a Nick Chubbish type running back. Like not always in there at third down, but he's in there in the goal line. He's getting the majority of the carries. Like I can see that for him at like
yeah.
best case scenario, and then worst case he's just it's a 1A 1B type. He's in a committee, and it is what it is. But yeah, I can see that for him. Who else? I mean, Achan is always for me. I just feel like that's always a risky one with the amount of touches he's going to get. They've
Mhm.
got him lining up more like at wide receiver, running a little bit more routes now, apparently as well. So maybe that will be a little bit easier on the wear and tear. I don't know, but I think he's always a scary one. The problem with Achan is like you have to take him so high, like that. I don't
It's
want
not
to
worth yeah.
like rely on him as my RB1. I want him to like I'm comfortable and fine with him as my RB2, but if I have to draft him as my RB1, like I'm not as comfortable, with that. I just think there's other guys in that range that you can take.
Another guy that's really interesting that I think a lot of people are not excited about, but I think with Keenan Allen going to the Bears, a lot of people got this notion that Keenan Allen is all of a sudden going to stay healthy for an entire season, and not a guy that's going to get taken particularly high in fantasy drafts, but I do think people would have, pretty good expectations for him based on what he's done, obviously with his time with the Chargers. So Keenan Allen, another guy that I tend to stay away from. I pretty much stayed away from him ever since I started playing fantasy football. I think he's really good, but that injury history is just nope.
Yeah, I know Keenan is a tough one. He could be the number one guy. He could be the number three guy. He could be pulling a hammy in week three. I mean, I don't know. It's a tough situation. There's a lot of guys there, and he's getting a little bit older. We played great last year, but I don't know. You just never know. I got the number 12, and there's B Hall, AJ Brown, Tyreek, Puka, and Olave. The number 12 pick. Is this a one QB Philly Mike? It goes Puka or Olave. It would be Puka for me.
Yeah, if
Will
that's the
in the
case.
building. What up, Will? Haven't seen you two for a
Well, what's
while. Always
happening,
great
bro?
content. Appreciate you.
Yes,
Help back to
sir.
back. My bad, Philly Mike. Gibbs. I'd go. I'm guessing it's a one QB if you're at the 12 right here. So I mean,
I
I'd be
like me
good
some
with
AJ Brown.
I'd be good with Brees and AJ. Like those would be, for Dynasty. If you want to take Cheetah, I mean, I guess, but I feel like AJ Brown's still, we're still comfortable with him for the next few years.
And also too, AJ Brown, even if your team isn't that great, AJ Brown is going to hold his value more
A
than
little
a
bit.
Tyreek Hill at this point. So
Right.
even if you decided to tear down from an AJ Brown, you could still recoup some good draft capital and or other pieces. It'll be a lot easier to tear down from AJ Brown than a Tyreek Hill in my estimation.
I mean, Cheetah's value can't go up. I mean,
Yeah.
dude was on pace for 2,000 yards, and his value ain't going up, guys.
Tell me about it. I'm still holding on to Cheetah in our subscriber league because I think I got a chance to go for it. So I'm not trying to. I want to
Oh, if
at
you're
least
in
if I can get
contention,
this.
you're holding Cheetah. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You're not getting rid of
Right.
him if you're in contention, unless you win the ship and you decide like, okay, I'm ready to cash out now while he's still scoring a tremendous amount of points. Then, I'd be okay with that. But if you
Yeah.
are competing, you want Cheetah. Captain
Facts.
Spock, what up? What up, dogs? Charbonnet was trash.
He
Yeah,
was.
he wasn't as exciting as I think we wanted him to be. I think Bigsby, same kind of thing, but now it's their second year. They might be a little more comfortable, acclimated a little bit more. I don't think those guys are taking over a backfield, but those are the guys you want on your bench, right? They're one injury away from being the Zach Mosses, Jerome Ford, like, league winning type guys. Will said, "Who do you realistically think I could get at the 110 and the 201 in a 10-player rookie draft? I'm taking Malik at the 1-2. Don't need Caleb. 10-man PPR Superflex. Can I get Brooks and Benson there?" It's a 10-man, 110 and 201. You're taking Malik at the 1-2, which I'm okay with in a 10-man, but can I get Brooks and Benson there? It's possible, yeah. I mean, quarterbacks are going to be falling, right? It is a 10-man, so yeah. I mean, I think that's a possibility. I think
That's the
that's a
thing I do
possibility for
like
sure.
about super flex drafts is that because quarterback people reach for quarterbacks, and even in our subscriber league draft, not that people were reaching for quarterbacks per se, but those quarterbacks, especially if you don't need one and you're at that 110 and 201 like you are, Will, you're going to get really good value and really good guys in that back end of the first and even on through the second round. So yeah, I'm looking for those type of guys. I ended up with like 3 or 4 second round picks in our subscriber league, and I was able to get Pearsall, I was able to get Roman Wilson, I was able to get some really, really good guys that I liked, not necessarily for this year, but going into the future. So that's a pretty good position to be in if you're at the 110 and 201 in a super flex. You're gonna get some damn good value.
Look, AJ Brown is on the clock for the next pick.
Okay. I like
Who
that
was
AJ
it?
Brown
I'm
pick.
trying to
Brees
see who
Hall,
was there. I
Puka,
think it was
Olave.
Brees.
Puka, Olave.
How many starters is it? Philly Mike, like how many starters on offense do you have to play? I know you said it's one QB. So like how shallow are we talking here? I'd probably go Brees. I mean, you've got a stud wide receiver, a stud running back would be good. Typically the one QBs are a little more shallow, so I'm okay with taking the running back there.
The
Otherwise I'd
Brees pick
probably
isn't a
double
bad
up
one.
with like a AJ Puka.
The thing that worries me about Puka is how much longer is Matthew Stafford going to be around? And if Matthew Stafford gets injured for any reason, that just zaps Puka's value. Not to say Puka's couldn't, be good with a different quarterback, but he's not going to be worth that second round, that
Not gonna be
201
worth
pick.
top five
Yeah.
wide receiver that he
Yeah,
is now, or
exactly.
top six wide
Exactly.
receiver.
I
He
think
probably
Brees
fall
Hall
like
is the
10-ish. Like, I mean, we see Garrett Wilson. I mean, Garrett Wilson is all the way up there with Puka just because he has Aaron Rodgers now. But otherwise, he'd probably be in like the Chris Olave,
Mhm.
type range. Drake London,
I think Brees Hall is a good pick there.
I think he is too. Chaotic, what up, Chaotic? Kamani Vidal. I take Corum over Benson. I don't think I take him over Benson, but it's not like I don't think it's a huge difference. But the reason why would be just because like what happens to Connor after this year. Does Benson start to, take over? I think that Corum is like he's just like Kyron. I mean, he just needs an opportunity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Somebody's got to get hurt, and both of these guys almost basically for this year. But if Kyron stays healthy, like he can continue to be the workhorse guy. Where, Benson, I guess you can say the future is maybe a little more clear. I mean, he's still a risk, but he's got an opportunity, right? And he's behind an old running back that typically, gets
Gets hurt.
injured, but has somehow stayed healthy the last couple years. Marty in the building. What up, Marty?
Marty.
Two running back, three wide receiver, three flex. Okay. So it's like a start 10. Then, yeah, I might be inclined to go wide receiver then instead of running back almost. I mean, you can start 6 wide receivers in this. But
Two
I'm
running
okay with
back,
it. All
three
right, he said he
receiver,
took
three
Brees.
flex.
All right, you're good. You're good. There's no wrong there. I mean, Brees is
I'm
awesome.
not mad at
So
that.
yeah, so you got AJ Brown and you got Brees. So you've got like your
That's
hero
solid.
running back, right? Now we're not touching running back for a while right now. Now we're hammering out the wide receivers, maybe a QB you can get in a good range, a tight end possibly. But yeah, I'm not really worried about running back now that you've got Brees. So I'd probably just hammer out a bunch more wide receivers now. You can start 6 of them. So I'm inclined to grab a lot. I like the tape on Benson, not so much for Brooks, both over Corum for me though. Yeah, for me too. I mean, Brooks for me was the best talent out of all those guys. And the NFL thought that way as well. Obviously, he got picked, before anybody else in that second round. So, but we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens during the season. Hammer, what do we got news wise? I know we got some quarterbacks that made some money. So let's talk about
Yeah.
that and how that kind of
Woo.
affects some of the
Yeah.
dynasty
Yeah.
values and players and all that kind of stuff. So what do we got, Hammer?
Yeah, man. The two big guys that we had some questions on. First and foremost being my man, number 10, Jordan fucking Love. Get in the bag. Now, all reports, and obviously I follow the Packers a lot more closely than I follow all the other teams and stuff like that. So I wasn't surprised that the deal got done. He was at training camp for I think a day or two, and then he obviously wasn't practicing, and then he got the bag, bro. 4 years, 220, averaging 55. That's a lot, honestly. But for this particular Packers team, I like it because all the other skill position players are second and third year now. So you can afford to pay the quarterback and have these guys still on the roster and grow with your quarterback. Now you're going to have to make some decisions at some point in the next 2 years, but that's fine. You worry about that then. So Jordan Love getting the bag, and I think this vaults him. I think he was already kind of in that fringe top 10-ish range, but now that he's got the bag, you he could jump as high as 8-ish in a ranking, 7, 8-ish, because we know he's going to be there. And it's just so crazy how a year changes a lot of things, right? A year ago, and even through the year, remember the first 6 to 8 weeks of last year, we were like, oh shit, is Jordan Love even going to be the guy? The Packers were sitting at like number 5 in the draft at one point during the season, and we're like, yo, if this goes sour, the Packers could be picking in the top 5 in the draft, in a obviously a quarterback top heavy draft. So I think Jordan Love getting the bag secures him in that 8 to 10 range as far as dynasty quarterbacks go, especially with the young talent. And then you add in a Josh Jacobs. Like I just love everything about it. And I love how they were able to just pivot off of Aaron. Now they have Jordan Love. Let's go.
I think I had him at 10, but are we taking Jordan Love over Justin Herbert?
I might.
I think it's this. I think it's pretty much
I
apples. I
might.
think it's the same. I don't think there's a big
I
difference
might.
between either of those guys. They're kind of the same players. I mean, but like we've seen Herbie throw for 5,000 in the season, right? We've
But
seen him
Herbie
throw for
doesn't
38 tutties. We've
with
seen him throw
Keenan
for
and
another almost
Mikey
5,000. I know, but
and
I mean,
Eckler.
it's
Like
not
that's
like
a revamp. That's a whole
you
revamp
know.
there.
It is. But we are playing dynasty, so things always change, right? I mean, Herbert's not going to have shit receivers forever.
But do you
But we'll see
like
what
what?
happens with Lad.
Do you like the skill do you like the skill and youth of the Packers offense as a whole as to the unknown of what the Chargers are gonna have? Just call let's project out, right? The next 3 years. Do you like Jaden Reed? Do you like Christian Watson? Do you like Romeo Dubes? Do you like Dontavian Wicks? Do you like the tight ends?
I mean, I think they're all okay. I don't think any of them are like
I agree, but
superstars,
I'm
like,
saying the
but
collection and what they can all do as a
listen,
collective
the
unit.
collection yeah, the collection is there. Obviously, the collection is not there for this particular season. Do I like Jordan Love over Justin Herbert for this upcoming season? Yeah, possibly. I can see that. But, going out towards the future, obviously it's hard to project like who's going to be available next year or, what wide receiver they might take early in next year's draft. Like, there's a million things that can happen, right? I mean, T. Higgins could be a free agent. Like
Yeah,
maybe Devontae Williams finally gets out of the Raiders. Like you just don't know, obviously, what can happen. Anything can happen. So it's
and
hard for the future. But I think they're like you just to either or. I think they're back to back. I don't think they're both. I feel like early second round picks in Superflex dynasty leagues. Like
and to be fair, and to be honest with you, listen, my team is my team, but I'll be objective when objective calls for it, right? I think Justin Herbert is amazing. And I think if he still had kind of his core guys in place, like I think if Keenan and Mike Williams and Eckler were still there and they were kind of together as a unit, I think I would lean Justin Herbert just by a hair, but I like what I've seen from Jordan Love. I love the confidence that I've seen, particularly last season down the stretch. They got the playoff experience all together. So I kind of liked what I've seen from that standpoint. And I'm taking Jordan Love over Justin Herbert at this point. Not by much, obviously, but like the projecting out for this particular season and even the next 2 to 3 seasons in total, I like what Jordan Love has to work with. And there's actually some stability there. Now, I will say that John Harbaugh is going to do wonders with Justin Herbert, but they have a young core group of guys. It's a whole revamp that he doesn't have a ton of rapport with. So that's going to take some time. We've seen it before with a Jordan Love, with an Aaron Rodgers. When you have a bunch of these young skill guys, it takes time for them to learn and gel together as a team. So I'm taking Jordan Love over the next 2 to 3 years over Justin Herbert.
I can see that. I mean, like I said, they're back to back. And I mean, for the wide receivers on the team, I mean, he's got a bunch of young guys like they're going to play together for a while. But who is the guy? Is it just going to be spread around too much? Like Jaden Reed, Wicks, like Dubes, Watson. Like there's a lot to go around. Like, what if Watson stays healthy? What if he doesn't stay healthy?
But
Like,
we're talking about from
I
a
think
quarterback. We're talking about from a quarterback standpoint. Like I don't like any of those guys individually on that offense. I'm not excited about when it comes to fantasy. I think Jaden Reed is probably my favorite player on that offense just because he could do a little bit of everything and
what are we doing with Jaden Reed now?
he's a home
Where do
run
you, where do
hitter.
you see him like slotting in? I guess wide receiver rankings. Like where
He's
what are
a
we doing
he's a
with Jaden Reed?
he's a wide receiver 3 flex, honestly, but he has upside, and the emergence of Dontavian Wicks has kind of curbed Jaden Reed's upside a little bit because we've seen play like that Dallas playoff game, the Packers scored 48 points. Jaden Reed had as many catches as all of us on this show tonight. 0. Now, you could look at that from two sides of the coin, right? Is that they have a plethora of talent and they don't need to force feed it to one guy like, the Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams type teams, that could be good and bad. So I think you could look at it from either side of the coin, but Jaden Reed had his moments where he was fantastic. Like he really was. And if he's a flex play on a weekly basis. If he's your wide receiver 3, I could live with that. I wouldn't be crazy about it, but I think his upside is curbed with the emergence of Dontavian Wicks. And let's also not forget they got a workhorse running back in Josh Jacobs now. So that kind of also kind of curbs his upside a little bit. And Jordan Love is not a slouch on the ground. He had four touchdowns on the ground as well, and he can move around a little bit. So I think Jaden Reed is a wide receiver 3 flex play on a weekly basis, but he's going to be hit or miss on some weeks.
Yeah, I think he's just one of those guys that you might want to take advantage of the value and cheer up now because there is a world where You know, like we mentioned Cup before, like what if Watson stays healthy? He becomes the number one dude. Like now Jaden Reed loses his value. Maybe Wicks continues to get better. Like, you know, there's just a
Yeah.
multitude of outcomes that can happen. So do you want to be stuck with him at the end of the day, or, you know, can you take advantage and try and come off?
So he finished
Um,
as wide receiver 23 and half PPR, which is, bottom end wide receiver too. But I think that's because, like you said, because of the injury to Christian Watson, and then obviously Dontavian Wicks didn't really emerge until the tail end of the season, then into the playoffs where Jaden Reed played the full 16, or he played 16 games. So he was able to kind of pick up some of that slack. Obviously, Romeo Dubes is still there. We didn't even mention him. We haven't even mentioned the tight ends to go along with that. So there's just a lot to go around. So I'm not crazy about any one specific guy. I'm just really excited for Jordan Love and what it does for his upside, because he has so many guys that he trusts, that he's been through. They went to the playoffs together. They won a playoff game. They almost went to the NFC Championship game. So I like it more for Jordan Love than I do any one of those skill guys.
yeah, I'm just looking at Jaden Reed's like snap percentage, and like even with Watson being
It's
out, I
yeah,
mean, he
it's
only
hit or
had
miss.
2 games over 70% snaps. Like,
It's
you
hit or
know,
miss.
I mean, he came along a little bit more towards the end of the season with some good games, but
But that's the roller coaster that you would have to deal with. Now
mhm.
he got some love on the ground, right? He was able to do something here and there. So, he had wide receiver 11 week, a wide receiver 6 week, a wide receiver 4 week if you made it to the championship. But then he's had wide receiver 50, wide receiver 96. Like, that stuff's going to happen when you're a part of that Green Bay offense. So um, he's my favorite player skill wise on that offense, but hard to trust on a week to week basis.
How about this? A tier down from CJ Stroud to Jordan Love in the first.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm taking that. Fuck yeah.
Like CJ Stroud is valued so high that, you know, if you can get a Jordan Love or a Justin Herbert or a Kyler Murray and a first round
And a
pick,
first
like
round
is
pick.
yeah, like that's a good bet to make. That's a good tier down to make. I think people are so in love with Stroud that they'd be willing to kind of tier up, you know, from some of these guys.
So CJ Stroud finished QB 11 for all of his hype and how good he was. And CJ Stroud's fantastic. And I'm a big fan of CJ Stroud. If you guys go back, I said I would take CJ Stroud over Bryce Young in rookie drafts, in the real draft. I like CJ Stroud way more than I liked Bryce Young. But for all of his hype and everything, he finished as QB 11. Obviously, he's a rookie, and that's fantastic for a rookie. But if you're comparing that to Jordan Love finished QB 5. Now, what was the difference on a points per game basis? I will check that out for you right now. So in PPR, CJ Stroud was 18.7, and Jordan Love had to be close to 20. And that was with a shitty half, 19.4. So about a point per game difference, a little less. So yeah, and not a ton of rushing for CJ Stroud.
Well, we'll see what he does this year. I mean, if you look at Joe Burrow's second year, and that was with him coming back from the injury, I think he had what, 4,600 yards, 34 tutties in that second year. And then you look at like Herbert. I mean, in his second year, he threw for 5 wow with 38 tutties. Very similar kind of first season to Stroud. I mean, he threw for 4,300 yards, 31 tutties compared to what was it, 41 and like 23 tutties for CJ Stroud. Um, so like that, listen, the pressure is there. Like, and this is what we always see. Same thing with Burrow, same thing with Herbert. They get pushed up the dynasty rankings, and then finally, like they come back to reality. Like they're not rushing QBs, so they wind up
Yep.
moving down a little bit in the rankings. And like, how much difference is there really from some of these guys? CJ Stroud, Joe Burrow, Jordan Love, Justin Herbert. Like, is there much difference between any of those guys realistically?
No, I don't think so. Now, I think because Justin Herbert has had some overhaul with his entire team, I think he slides down a little bit, but like you said, you can take advantage of that. I don't know what his skill position players are going to look like, but if I had to rank those guys, I would take Burrow 1, I'd take Jordan Love 2, probably CJ Stroud 3, but that's 1A, 1B. But like you said, what is the real difference? And especially if you're talking about picking up an additional asset off of it, what can I turn that first into?
Mhm.
That's
It's
really where
just
that comes into play.
they're kind of all fit in like the same-ish kind of tier where they're not rushing quarterbacks, but they can throw for 4,500, 5,000, wow, and they can throw for all kind of 30 plus tutties. Like they're all kind of the same almost. Goku, what up, Goku? Good night, gentlemen. Great show. What's your take on Dak value in Dynasty? Just traded for him. I think he's going like way underrated. I
I
mean,
would agree.
there's CD contract talks, there's Dak contract talks, but like, who else are they getting that's better than Dak? And
They're
even
gonna
if
pay
Dak
him.
were, and even if let's just say Dak were to go somewhere else, he's still slinging the ball. Like he's still a good fantasy quarterback. Like maybe he's not winning you a Super Bowl, but I don't give a shit about that. All I care about is my fantasy team, right? Like that's what matters. So, like, yeah, I think Dak is very, very safe. I think he's still relatively youngish for a quarterback, and I think he'll get a contract with Dallas. Worst comes to worst, somewhere else, but like he's not a bad quarterback. We see what he just did. I mean, if you look at all his,
I'm looking
how
at it
was
right
he at?
now.
Look at all his healthy seasons. I mean, has he finished outside of the top 10 in any healthy season?
No. Healthy seasons, he's finished 7, 10, 2, 8, 3.
I mean, so yeah, like I'm all for it with Dak. He's not necessarily a rushing quarterback, but he throws the rock. They didn't go out and get a running back to help them kind of like pound the ball. I mean,
Right.
wound up getting Zeke and like, they've got some other dudes,
That's
but
not a needle mover as far as affecting Dak's fantasy value.
no, no.
No, I'm a big fan of Dak. As far as fantasy goes, I think he chokes in the playoffs, but that's not what you're not banking on that because he still be playing in the regular season in our fantasy playoffs. So Dak is a fantastic fantasy quarterback, and he's 31. But we talk about this all the time. Is that 31 as a quarterback is like 23 as a running back? Like it equates very very well. It seems like Dak's been in the league forever, and I think he's going into his 8th or 9th season, but he's only 31 years old. Like he's still got 6, 7 years of really good football in him. So if you're getting Dak in Dynasty, you're in really good shape.
Think he's in that tier right after those guys we were just talking about. Or you can maybe argue he's in like the back end of that tier,
You
but
can argue that. 36
um
touchdowns, 4,500 yards.
yeah, that's what's going to be happening. I mean, nothing's really going to be changing for them. I mean, Mystic said in a 14 team Superflex start 11, 1.5 tight end premiums. QBs are Caleb Herbert, Kyler Purdy, Levis. We were just talking about this earlier. If you rewind to the beginning of the show, I literally had brought this up. No, we're not giving up Purdy for Kincaid in a second and a third. That's not happening. Um, JSN and Rashi for a first round pick, or Rashi for a first round pick. I mean, that is somewhat enticing because you're getting a first. But no, I mean, Purdy's going in what, like the end of second rounds, third rounds of drafts. Like he is, he's valuable. And then if you rewind to earlier, like I said, I mean, there's a right time to do it. Now it's not the right time. Like maximize that value during the
Yep.
season.
Somebody's
People
going
are
to need
going
a
to need
quarterback.
somebody's going to need a quarterback, and at that time, like you have the leverage and you can get the most out of that. There's no rush to make this pick. What if Herbert gets hurt and Kyler gets hurt and fucking Levis gets benched and then you only got Caleb going for you? I had one league last year where I had Kyler, Deshaun Watson, and Anthony Richardson. I thought I was Gucci. And
Ooh.
and look how that happened, right?
They all got hurt.
I had a league with Burrow and Anthony Richardson, and Kyler in that league too. Look how that turned out. Like you just never know. Like shit happens. So
And if
no, I'm
we're
not
going to
giving them
take
up for that cheap. I want more.
if we're going to take anything from what happened last season, bro, people were playing Joe Flacco at a certain point, right? People were playing, Tommy
Minshew.
DeVito and Tyrod Taylor, Minshew,
Tommy
right?
DeVito.
Like people were really doing that. Like
That's true.
a lot of quarterbacks got hurt, man. So you have a ton of value. You have four starting quarterbacks, potentially five, really. So you want to hang on to that value and maximize it because at some point, and it'll be even better for you if a contender comes along or somebody is like, damn, my quarterback got hurt. Now you can tax them on it.
Or can I add something to Purdy to get to an elite wide receiver, right? I mean, Purdy's going to get you more into the elite wide receiver conversation than, a first round pick or Rashee Rice or Kincaid in a second. Like, Purdy's going to get you into that conversation more than those other guys will, especially in a 14 team. Like, somebody's has to need a quarterback. So,
Yep.
the quarterbacks are valuable. I know that your wide receiver room is down here. You might want to add a little something to it, but just wait for the right time. You don't need to do that right now. I
And
just
think
don't think that's helping you as much. I mean, you've got Sanat, you've got Komet. Like you're fine with Komet. Would I rather have Kincaid? Of course, 100%, but not at the not at the
expense.
value,
Yeah.
not at the expense, right? Of giving up Purdy,
Hmm.
right? You got
And
Neighbors,
think
you got T, you got Addison, you got Ladd. Leggett, Dotson, like yeah, can you add an Addison to like a Purdy and grab a elite wide receiver or a T and a Purdy to get an elite wide receiver, right? Or any of those guys available? Chase, JJ, or Amon-Ra? Does one of those guys become available during the season? Does an injury happen and a window opens where like you can buy one of those guys? Like somebody's gonna need a quarterback, so
and think
you
about it
know.
from this standpoint. Go back to the previous
It's
breakdown.
a 14 team start 11. I'd be inclined to give up JT for a wide receiver as well.
You have you have five starting quarterbacks in a 14-team superflex league. You have
Mm.
the golden ticket, especially once the season starts. Like you have the golden ticket where the value of those guys, even some of those back end guys, those back end quarterbacks that you're not going to be playing on a regular basis, they're going to have value because somebody's going to get hurt. And just from a sheer numbers point alone, if you have five starting quarterbacks, that means that's five starting that's quarterbacks other people don't have. And there's only so many starting quarterbacks on a per week basis. And then once bye weeks kick in, you're talking about even less quarterbacks to go around once bye weeks start kicking in. So you'll be able to really take advantage of that value once injuries and bye weeks start setting in.
Just be patient. I mean, Caleb can get you into the top wide receiver conversation. Like,
Oh yeah.
Kyler. Like, it doesn't have to be Purdy. Maybe during the season, like somebody really wants Caleb. And JJ is just playing all right because the quarterback situation is meh. Like you just don't know, what can happen. So I'd be inclined to start shopping like Caleb, Herbert, and well, not so much Herbert because people aren't really on him right now. But I'd be inclined to shop Caleb and Kyler to go get a elite quarterback and just keep the rest of the guys that you have. So that would be a good idea too. But I want somebody like pretty much elite. I mean. Or I
And you're in a
want like
good position to
multiple
do that.
multiple pieces. Like it's a 14 team, it is a start 11, so it's like it's deep, you know? It just I want more. I want more than that. Try to do Purdy for London straight up. They don't want it. Yeah, I wouldn't even do that. Because Purdy's the quarterback in the 14 team league. Like you've got the leverage there over the wide receiver. Full of redrafters are going to block me out of trades. They don't understand the value. And that's fine. It might take a year for them to understand. It might take a couple games in the season. It might take halfway through the season when, they're losing because, you're beating the shit out of them with,
Mhm.
Caleb and Kyler, like, or Purdy, if that matter, like,
Yeah.
and then, Stafford gets hurt, or, Russell Wilson's not the starting quarterback and it's Justin Fields. And, there's a whole bunch of things that can happen with quarterbacks. We saw that last year with all the injuries, right? Maybe Anthony Richardson goes down again. Who knows?
Yeah, man. It's the situation, and like you said, just take advantage of the leverage that you have because you have leverage. You have five essentially starting quarterbacks, so take advantage of that leverage. Push the
Everybody feels
envelope a little
safe.
bit.
Everybody feels safe right now because we're not actually in the season. Like points aren't being scored and quarterbacks are not being replaced or injured right now, but there is going to be a time where it happens, every year it happens sooner or later at one
Oh
point or
yeah,
another. Somebody's going to need a quarterback and then somebody's going to be knocking.
for sure.
Who should I start? Kyler and Herbert week 1? I don't know. We'll see who's even healthy by week 1. You never know.
Yeah, you got a long way to. A lot can happen in this next month.
You
Trust and
never
believe.
know. Right, right. You
Trust and
never know.
believe.
And you don't got to make that decision now. You got plenty of time to make that decision. Don't worry about who you're starting. Worry about who you can make a trade with. And if you can't do it right now, then just sit on your hands and sleep good, you know. Just
Don't panic.
understand you might not win the first year, and that's absolutely fine, but you have assets, Can you turn JT into a wide receiver? I mean, it's a start 11. Like I really don't care about my running backs almost in that point. Like give me as much value as I can. One injury to JT and that value is tanked, you know.
Yep.
If you're giving up JT, I probably want someone in the top 15, 20-ish range. So, it's not necessarily about who you should necessarily get, but who needs a running back that's willing to give up a wide receiver that might have excess wide receivers. Surf through the different teams and see who could use a running back, and then see who's on their team and attack it that way. You can't just say, go get Drake London. I mean, that team might have two running backs already. They don't really need a JT, where they want to give up a guy like London. It's got to be something that they need and something they might have extra of.
Oh, absolutely. It's all about taking advantage of the value.
So, I mean, we'll keep going for about another 5-6 minutes here before we hop off. But Tua was the other one that got the contract, right?
Yeah, man. Tua got the deal. 4 years, 212. I believe 160 million guaranteed. 167 mil guaranteed. So Tua getting locked up. Obviously, we know what they have in Waddle and Cheetah. You gotta like it. I've never been the biggest Tua fan, but with those skill guys that he's gonna have for probably the next at least 2 to 3 years, he's gotta be on that fringe QB1 ish range. I would put him somewhere in that 12 range for me. Not a ton of rushing upside, but when you got Waddle and Hill, his value is going to be there. So I do like it for the Dolphins. I feel like he's shown what he can do with that healthy, with those guys healthy, and he's shown particularly last season. Now, the thing that concerns me is, especially if they're going into a cold weather week 13, week 14 type situation, like he does make me nervous from that standpoint. We saw he absolutely turned into a popsicle against Kansas City in the playoffs. So that would concern me, his cold weather play, especially towards the tail end of the season. But yeah, I think it's a good fit for Miami. And yeah, I got him in that 12-ish range.
I mean, he was a value in drafts for basically like 2 years
Yeah,
in a row. People were afraid with the concussions. But after he played
rightfully
this
so.
season and led the league in passing, I mean, we kind of knew the contract was coming. There was some like reports that they weren't going to make him, being paid that high. They didn't want to spend the money, and then they wound up actually giving him the contract. But another kind of situation like Dak, like what are you doing? Like who else are you going to get, really? Who else is out there that's going to give you a better chance than Tua?
Yeah.
Who was, ninth in pass attempts, ninth in deep ball attempts, seventh in red zone attempts, led the league in passing yards for 4,600, 10th in air yards, second in yards per attempt, fourth in adjusted yards per attempt, first in accuracy rating, seventh in true completion percentage. I mean, the guy is a good, accurate quarterback. Like, I mean, true passer rating sixth. I mean, deep ball accuracy first. Like there's not much like to not like about Tua other than he's just not like elite, but
No.
can he throw for 30 tutties and almost 5,000 yards like he did this year? Like, yes. Can he throw for more touchdowns? Yeah, possibly. I mean, who's to say Mostert is going to run in another 20 something tutties and so that happened as well. Like, do they get some more passing opportunities down there? Instead of rushing it in all the time. I think that could be a possibility as well. But, worst case scenario, he's like a top 15-ish,
Mm-hmm.
12, 15-ish quarterback. But, in a passing offense, and us loving Tyreek Hill and loving Jalen Waddle, like you have to kind of love Tua too, right? I mean,
To a
Tua is the
degree.
one that's going to make it go around, right? So
Hmm.
you're basically kind of, if you're betting on Cheetah and Waddle, you're kind of betting on Tua as well, right?
Yeah, and I think the thing that's holding Tua back from getting into that top 12-ish range, literally he's giving you 0 in the rushing department, like absolutely dog squat in the rushing department. So there's not as high of a ceiling
Upside, yeah.
as even a guy like a Jordan Love who gave you 400 yards and 4 touchdowns on the ground to buoy his rushing and his overall fantasy numbers. So he is a strictly pocket quarterback that he's going to do all of his damage through the air. So that limits him a little bit. He was QB1 in week 1 last year with 38 fantasy points, but outside of that, he finished QB2. He had a QB3 week, a QB10 week, a QB9 week. So he was good for the first half. The second half, he wasn't good. That second half of the season after the bye, he was not particularly good. Only had one top 10 QB week, and that wasn't overall very impressive. 23 fantasy points. So, to a solid, if he's your super flex quarterback, that's the perfect spot for him to be in as your QB2. He'll give you some explosive weeks, especially with the weapons. I think you bring up a really good point with the Mostert thing. And do we really see Mostert running in 20 touchdowns again? So if you take 4 or 5 of those and give those to Tua, now you're talking about mid 30s.
Hmm.
So that's a realistic expectation. 30, 35 touchdowns, 4,500 yards, but nothing else on the ground. So he'll probably be in that QB 10, 12, 14 range.
I mean, he's throwing the ball, what, 560 times last year. So, 550, 600 pass attempts. Like he's gonna be up there as long as his guys can stay healthy. But yeah. Guys, throw any last second questions you guys have out in the chat. Appreciate everybody for hopping in. We've got I'll be actually back on in a couple minutes. We've got a redraft mock going on with some other content creators. So if you want to stick around for redraft, you can do that. And let me throw the Discord out in the chat as well. So whoever wants to join the Discord, hop in the Discord. We are pretty much just talking Dynasty every day.
Yeah, yeah.
It is free, so hop in and make sure you guys smash that like, smash that subscribe if you're new. Hopefully you enjoyed the content. But what else you got, Hammer?
That's it, man. Yeah, just hit us up about if you want to be in the subscriber league, Dynasty Draft, or Dynasty League, I should say. We want to get this draft kicking off soon. And yeah, man, it feels good to be back and can't wait for fantasy football, regular football. I'm excited for it all.
Hmm. Absolutely. I won't be on next week, just because I'll have my family here, so I probably won't be on next week. So we'll skip one week and we'll be back probably the week after, if we don't just hop on a different day or something. So appreciate everybody, but we are out.
He's back, baby.